Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Random Short Radio, episode 454, coming to you on Monday, October 17th. We're going to look back at USC's 43-42 heartbreaking loss to the Utah Utes. Take your questions and so much more. As always, feel free to follow us on social media. We're at Random Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Our email address is randomtroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host, Alicia Deratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back for another Fallout episode. Truly a Fallout episode. When we moved over to YouTube, we got a bunch of comments at the beginning asking things like, why is it a CarCast? Why is it a Fallout episode? A Fallout episode means, it implies bad things and all that stuff. And, why was there a Fallout episode about the Rice game, for instance? Well, here we are. It's Utah. USC loses to Utah. I think rightfully so. It is a Fallout episode.
I feel like there can be fallout to things.
There's fallout to anything, yeah.
That were not bad necessarily. I can't say I know the etymology of the word in particular, but yeah, there's definitely fallout to this one. So
yeah,
fallout that could be far-reaching. So we'll have to pick through it.
There's fallout to the Fallout episode.
There is, yes.
What's the first thing you and I do when we finish an episode?
We take off our headphones, sit back, and say that was a good episode, or that wasn't our best episode.
Oh, I didn't like this part. That part didn't go well. That part went well. This part,
yeah.
Did you think this part went well? Yeah. But welcome everybody who is watching us live here on YouTube, as always. And if you're joining us on Apple Podcasts, thank you for joining us there as well. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you're joining us. If you are watching us, you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, leave a review over in the app formerly called iTunes. It helps us grow the show. We did get a new 5-star review from Angels Fan 1522 that says, best college football podcast. Michael and Alicia have this amazing knack to draw me into the podcast. What I've come to expect every single episode will have some USC football content and a whole lot of food takes. Some are good, but some make no sense to me. But it doesn't matter because it's very entertaining, especially the playful banter between the hosts. I love the show, and I look forward to every episode.
Yeah, thank you for the review, Angels Fan 1522. I'm going to guess that you had the same sort of catharsis that we had after the Utah game, knowing that, well, at least the Dodgers fans in our lives are also miserable. Congrats to Rama Murdy in the chat, who is from San Diego, said that she missed the CarCast, or he or she missed the CarCast because they were watching that game. So congrats to you. Sorry to all of our Dodger fans out there. I will genuinely say sorry. I don't know that Michael will genuinely say sorry. But Angels Fan is probably along the lines between one of us, between at least other people are not having a good night too. And Michael full on gloating.
I'm not gloating or anything. I just want to talk about Dave from Orange County, who's in the YouTube chat, that says, I feel like I'm going through the 5 stages of grief right now from that Utah game. Well,
yeah.
What stage are you in? I never remember the stages.
What are the stages? There's anger, bargaining, denial, depression, and then acceptance. Is that what it is?
Maybe something like that.
So on Saturday night, I was definitely stewing in some anger. I think a lot of USC fans have been in denial/bargaining for a while. Sunday and today, I'm definitely, if depression is being just exhausted beyond belief, then that's me. I would love to be on acceptance. I think it'll take me longer. Kenny is on acceptance in the chat. I think I will be on acceptance the next time I get to watch USC win a game, which always makes me feel better. But we have to wait a couple weeks for that.
Have to wait an extra
potentially.
week,
Yeah. So yeah, the stages of grief are a thing, and I don't know if waking up early to go watch Liverpool set me into this
Hey,
tailspin of
Liverpool
tiredness.
beat Man City. There you go.
They
The
did. This is transference is undefeated, guys. I'm
it
sorry.
exists.
If
Yeah.
I could control it, I would have not applied transference in these directions this weekend. But also, I did promise Marcelo in the Slack that I would make a public apology when USC was up. I think it was after USC scored their third touchdown. I jumped the gun and said that USC was going to the playoff. I said, screw it, USC's going to the playoff.
Wait, you
And
tweeted that?
no, in the Slack.
Oh, okay.
In the Slack. I also may have sent some text messages to people with that exact sentiment. Definitely jumped the gun. Definitely jinxed
such
it.
A rookie?
I am. It's a problem. I publicly apologize to the Raina Troy family, to the USC
God.
family, to the players and the coaches at USC. That was definitely my bad. And between me saying that and transference being on the line, I really screwed up. And that's I have to look at the tape and learn from it and grow. And in November, I think you guys are gonna really like what I'm like.
Did you fight hard like a warrior?
I fought hard like a warrior to not have that come through. And yeah. Just
anyways, yeah, it's been I have a lot of thoughts after it's been a couple of days. I think we will get into those. I want to get into the news as well first before anything. But we did get a really quick off-topic question I want to touch on before we get to everything else. Dave the Greater says, leftovers for dinner tonight with twice baked potatoes. What do each of you liked on your baked potato?
I am a sour cream and bacon and a lot of cheese person. I'll let some chives be on there too. I don't tend to have chives available to me. Cheese, yeah, definitely sour cream, cheese. Mm-hmm. I'll take butter. I'll take everything, but I definitely need cheese and a lot of it.
Baked potatoes are bad because potatoes are bad in any form with the exception of hash browns or fries.
There's the food take.
There's
the food take.
So it's true. Sorry, mashed potatoes, terrible. Scallop potatoes, abysmal. Potato soup,
none of all of these are like my favorite foods. No. This is my problem. Is potatoes are like my favorite thing. Like everything you just named fries there. No, I love fries. I love tots. I love baked potatoes. I love mashed potatoes. I love scallop potatoes. I love twice baked potatoes. I love everything. I love potato tacos. You guys ever had a potato taco? That stuff bangs. Potatoes in every form are my jam. Roasted potatoes, potato skins, loaded potatoes. Right. I mean, I'm like the dude from Forrest Gump with the shrimp.
The dude, you mean Bubba?
Yes, I'm like Bubba from Forrest Gump with the shrimp. Sagar in the chat. Give me a pronunciation for your name because I feel bad.
I think you're overthinking it. I think it's cigar.
Okay, that's fine. It says cheese, sour cream, and green onions. You and I get along on our baked potato toppings. And yeah, this is why the people in the chat are better than you. Mike.
That's fine. Like I said, people listen for you. They don't listen for me, but that's fine. Let's go into the news. We had a bunch of news. We don't really have a bunch of news.
Oh, gnocchi, also a good potato. Yes, Tim.
You mean gnocchi?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a fun word to say, right? Because you gotta lead it to gnocchi. Yeah. It's like you're going down a roller coaster. Yeah. Shout out to Kenny in the chat. All right, let's get into the news, Alicia. There is big news to discuss about the polls. USC now 6-1, 6-1 in the in their record through 7 games, going to the bye week, the midway point through the season for all intents and purposes. And they have fallen from number 7 in the AP poll down to number 12. But there still remains 3 Pac-12 teams in the top 12. I'm pulling it up now.
UCLA is number 9. Oregon is number 10.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on SC being 12?
It felt about right. It was a tough loss for USC. It was still a loss, so they had to drop. I don't mind obviously dropping. I do get the feeling that USC would have dropped further if the circumstances of the game had been different. I think that USC gets a little bit of what pass you can get from having a loss, knowing that it was in Salt Lake City, knowing that it was by 1 point, a 2-point conversion at the end of the game. And just the way it played out, like I as we're going to continue to say, that was not a bad loss, and I think the rankings reflect that the voters don't see that as a bad loss. And
Right.
Talking about what we talked about in the CarCast about, like, what does this mean for the playoff and for all this kind of stuff, like in the grand scheme of things, and we talked about this before, even a loss to Utah at Rice-Eccles does not end your season.
A 1-point loss, yeah.
A 1-point loss at that. You really can go ahead and take care of business for the rest of the season. Your goal right now, if you're USC, is simply to get to the Pac-12 title game, and the path to the Pac-12 title game is still pretty much in your control. It's
you can say it. You can say it.
Like USC controls its own destiny. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
And obviously it won't be easy because you still got to go against Notre Dame, who is terrible, but also I don't know what Notre Dame is. They have a really good tight end. That's scary. And you got to go through UCLA. So, there's still hurdles to cross. But when the voters drop you to 12, if you get through those hurdles, you will be in range, if you make it to the Pac-12 title game, to be in that playoff conversation again.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rankings right now, and I thought 12 was a little harsh. Now, 12 is good. If you're going to drop to 12, like
12 is a good spot to
12
be.
is not 18th, right?
Yeah.
And the way I looked at it, and I'm going to talk about this more when we talk about the game, I feel way better about SC's prospects now than I did a week ago. Quite honestly, even with USC losing the game. I feel significantly better about where this team is, and significantly better about their chances to do anything later on this year, whether it be win the Pac-12 or potentially go beyond that. I feel better about where USC is now than I did a week ago, honestly. And they dropped 5 spots in the poll, and I think that's a little bit harsh given that it was a 2-point conversion on the road against the ranked team in the last minute of the game and all that stuff. But you have to look at the landscape. Remember, we talk about these polls like they're multidimensional. Like, it's not just, and this is one of the frustrating parts that I have in talking about college football and rankings, because we just have an idea of what a top 10 team looks like. And then, SC doesn't look like a top 10 team, or SC does look like a top 10 team. This team does look, they're not playing like a top 10 team. Well, if there isn't, 10 teams better in the country than them, then they are a top 10 team, even if you don't think it. Like, because it's a ranking based on everybody else. Like, that's what a ranking is. And you look at it, well, who are the teams that lost this past week? Alabama lost in the last second, and Alabama's Alabama.
Yeah.
They weren't going to fall behind SC. They were already, ranked number 3. Like, that was always going to be tough for SC to be ranked ahead of Alabama this week. Even if SC wins, I think Alabama's in front of them. Oklahoma State loses in double overtime.
At TCU.
On the road at TCU. Basically the same thing that SC had. Was a road game against the ranked team, losing a 1-possession game at the very end. That's what Oklahoma State had too. They end up 1 spot ahead of SC. Okay, fine. it sort of all, and then TCU gets the jump considering that they beat Oklahoma State. It all sort of makes sense. All those teams are right about the same place. They're all right about the same level, if you ask me. The dividing point is the top two right now. Georgia and Ohio State look like they're on a different planet. But Alabama came back to the rest of the group. And maybe Tennessee ends up being one of those top three. I don't know. We'll see. But there's a lot of football to be played. UCLA is going up to Eugene to play in Autzen this week. So at least one of those teams will lose and presumably fall behind SC. There's plenty of time. I don't think the polls matter too much in that sense.
Oh, there's a lot of time to get back into the top 10.
Yeah, 100%.
By next week, it could be without doing anything.
Right. Let's talk about the game time for the Arizona game in 2 weeks on October, was the 29th. The Trojans play the 3-4 Arizona Wildcats in Tucson at Arizona Stadium. It's going to be 4 p.m. on the Pac-12 network. The Wildcats, of course, 3-4 coming off of a bye week. They will be as well on a bye week this week after losing back-to-back games to Oregon and Washington. Started out 3-2, 3-4 against two of the best teams in the conference. No harm, no foul there for their rebuild. Jaden Delora is racking up passing yards left and right. They look like they're going to be an offense that could give SC fits, absolutely. But we'll talk about them more probably next week. I would have, if I think we talked about at some point in the last couple of weeks about if it's not one of the teams that you expect to beat SC, Utah, UCLA, certainly a top 10 team, Notre Dame just based on prominence and history and all that stuff. If it's not one of those three teams, who is going to beat SC down the stretch? And I said I wouldn't be like totally gobsmacked if Arizona put up a fight, because we've talked about how they have a pulse with the new coaching regime with Jed Fish. And they have an offense with a quarterback who loves to throw the ball everywhere and three damn good receivers. I could see them like getting in a shootout that they have no business being in, and then being a hassle. But what did I say just a couple minutes ago? I feel better about SC right now than I did
before
a week ago. And I think the worst thing for Arizona's chances of beating SC was SC coming in on a loss after the bye week.
The only counter to that is that like the best thing for Arizona's chances was USC coming in off the bye week with like big injuries. And that's I mean,
which could be the case.
We
don't have an injury update with Addison or Gentry. Don't know the status of those guys, and I don't know that we'll get one this week either.
No, I don't think we will. I mean, I think at most we'll get they're not practicing, which I do not expect them to be. They shouldn't be practicing. Like, put them wrap them in bubble wrap this week and just let them sit. If it's something they could come back with at any point, just let them sit. But yeah, for Arizona, our buddy Rob Bowron, who does the Beta Rank stats, he posted a graphic of the difference, the matchup difference between USC's offense and Arizona's defense, and
it's got to be atrocious. As Larry in the chat said that Arizona's defense is horrible. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I agree with you that like Arizona could give USC a hassle.
SC could give up points to Arizona. Certainly.
Yeah, but unless USC turns the ball over 5 times, USC is going to score 70 here. So it's just going to be one of those games, and that would be. That I mean that it could be a weird game. It really could be, but USC should also be able to look ahead to the next couple of weeks after the bye week and know this is getting our bearings back. This is getting, building up momentum towards the end of the season. That's what they need to be focused on.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be interesting to see how the bye week goes.
Pac-12 Network, so that's the last one, theoretically.
Presumably, yes.
Yeah.
SC going down the stretch, the last 4 games, you're looking at Colorado's going to be on FS1. Then the only other game to potentially worry about is Cal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could see Cal being on ESPN like Pac-12 After Dark or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
We will see that when we get there. We'll get that news next week. No, 2 weeks, because after the Arizona game is the Colorado game, right?
Yes.
Is it Cal Colorado?
We should know
Colorado
this.
Cal. I'm losing.
They're both C names. So.
They're both C names, and they're both
games
November.
USC should not lose. So that's fine. The only important thing is one of those is on a Friday, and one of them is not.
Yes. All right. Let's get into talking about SC and Utah. The Trojans go on the road to Rice-Eccles, lose 43-42. They put up 1 billion yards, 556 yards. Only problem, the Utes put up 562 yards, including a couple yards on a 2-point conversion, and that's the stuff that hurts. The one that hurts for SC is the 2-point conversions and the 4th down conversions. 4th down, SC 0 of 2, Utah 3 of 3. There you go. There's the game right there. Utah converts their 4th down opportunities and their 2-point conversions. SC does not. That's it. And to go off my point, I'll go on my soliloquy before I turn it over to you here. Why do I feel better about where SC is right now versus last week after this game, even though SC lost, you asked? Because I had honest concerns about where the offense was. We know that SC has all the star players on offense, and we know that SC can be, and it's super explosive offense. We saw it in the first half against Stanford. We saw it against Rice. We saw it at times against Fresno State, all that kind of stuff. But they hadn't been consistently just torching teams. And one of the frustrations that I've had in the passing game has been a lack of a vertical passing game, a lack of of finding receivers open downfield. Just in general, maybe not even completely vertical, but like the mid-range passing game dudes haven't been wide open down in the middle of the field on crossers and all those kind of things, 20 yards downfield. Those dudes were open for days. Against Utah. How much of this was, Utah just playing a terrible zone? Brock Heward loved to talk about that. Maybe that's part of it, sure. But I have a hard time thinking that Utah is, inept enough on defense for 2 times in the last 4 years to come up with a defensive scheme where they not purposely, but like sabotage themselves stubbornly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they did that before.
The YOLO game, yeah.
The YOLO game, yeah. And, maybe Matt Fink scared Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley into never, ever running man defense again. Maybe that's what it is. And they were just going to play the softest of zones because of that. But SC was able to get in behind, even with the soft zones. The zones didn't take away the deep ball. They were able to have, you talked about in the CarCast that SC should have slowed down in the 3rd quarter. Well, there's a drive. They have 3 plays. The first play is like a post to, I think it was Mario Williams, who's wide open.
Oh, the widest of all the wide opens was Mario Williams
at midfield, and just there's 30 yards.
Yeah.
And then the next play is like a run to Travis Dye for like 15. And then the pass play to follow for like 12 or whatever it was. And it's like, well, yes, ideally take more time off the clock. But if you're able to move that quickly, like, come on, you take it. And so for me, I really liked what the offense did. We can talk about the struggles with the defense. Absolutely. I think the defense does need to be better. At the same time, I think that we need to not completely think that we were all sitting here a week ago praising, Alex Grinch and talking about on this podcast. We got a question, I remember, that said that who's been a better coordinator through the first 6 games. Grinch or Lincoln Riley. We both said Grinch. We all agreed Grinch. Everybody, you know what I mean? Like we all thought Grinch. And now suddenly it's, oh, well, the defense is the problem. Oh, like, let's not have this confirmation bias with this like short perspective where we only look at one game in a silo. I'm like tired of that perspective and those narratives. I want to look at everything overall. And is this defense perfect? No. At the same time, I don't want to sit here and talk about refs anymore. It's tiring. It's whiny. I talking about it for another podcast is I'm gonna pull my hair out. Like it's there's no point.
Boy, have I got news for you.
Oh God. But at the same time, it's baffling to me that people are the pass interference plays robbed SC. And the team gave up 43 and the defense gave up 43 points. You can't have both arguments.
Yeah.
You can't have both arguments, right? Because if you're hardlining that the refs cost the game, well, then you have to at least take the second Utah touchdown off the board, the one after the interception. The one on the long drive where it was the multiple penalties. Yeah, SC had their chances at least to make a stop, and they made the first third down stop, but like they had other opportunities there that they didn't do. But at least the first roughing the passer is literally the next play.
I mean, it was an interception in the end zone. Like, right. It was a huge play.
I don't know. Like the defense didn't make the stop, sure, but I keep going back to this is college football. This is not like I know that we have this idea that great defenses hold teams to 13 points every game. That is not the freaking reality. Like again, Alabama just gave up 52 points to Tennessee, and are people asking for? I don't know. Maybe I don't read Alabama message boards.
They are.
You know what I mean? But
Alabama's defense is getting a talking to.
But like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, but I know what you mean, and that's when I made the little joke there about talking about the refs. I can't not talk about the refs because I do want to defend the defense. I do want to defend the defense in that they gave up 43 points, but to me, they did get the stops that they needed to get. And that's what this defense has been. It's been you get the stops when you need to get them.
They got the fumble.
They got the fumble when they needed to get the fumble. And I've already, talked about how, well, and I have written down here, I have written down the two questions. What could have the offense done better and what could have the defense done better? And under the offense, I have just the one thing. Aside from, obviously, I would have preferred to slow down the pace of the game earlier and run the ball a little bit more. But I accept what you said, too. Like, USC was explosive and they were scoring, and they scored 42. To me, the big failure of the offense was 0 points off of turnovers. And when I say turnovers, I do mean, like, the turnovers in the sense that they got the one turnover that really they needed to score something, a field goal, a touchdown, something, and instead they punt right away after it.
Yeah.
And then the turnover that we didn't get to see, that was the interception. I think USC does USC score on their next possession?
No, because they were up 21-7. If they would have gotten the ball and scored there, it would have been 28-7.
Yes, which would have made a pretty big difference in the game.
Right.
So the 0 points off of turnovers is huge. And then on the defense, there's a lot of different things that you can look at, and I'll get to those. But I think also I feel for this defense because they got the stop. They got 2 huge stops in this game. They got taken away from them. And that's going to happen. I like you. My complaint isn't what I'm seeing from a lot of USC fans where it's like, they rigged it. Pac-12 wants to make USC lose. Like, no, I just think the Pac-12 refs got quick triggers on their flags, and it sucks that they don't let dudes play, and that sucks because they're incompetent. And also, they tried to steal a timeout from Kyle Whittingham, and also they gave USC extra seconds on the clock at the end of the game because they inadvertently blew a whistle because they're bad at their jobs. Like, they were bad across the board. Like, don't get it twisted that USC was the only one that got screwed by calls in this game. Everybody got screwed by calls in this game because the calls were just bad a lot of the time. But with that out of the way, Those two stops make a difference in this game. And when we talk about whether or not Alex Grinch has done a good job this year, if we're talking about a game where Utah scores 30 points and USC wins 42-30, I'm saying I'm happy with the defensive performance against a good offense that had a tight end that was making life miserable for USC. Like I'm pretty happy with that. It wouldn't be the end of the world. At the same time, I'm also the person who was saying over and over and over during the offseason that Alex Grinch defenses will be very, very good one week to the next, and then they will have a game where they give up 40. Like I predicted that they would have a game where they give up 40. So I can't say I'm exactly surprised. This is what happens when, and these are my what could the defense have done better talking points. Number one, cover Dalton Kincaid. We can beat this horse to death. Put a man on him. Change your zone. Change your matchups. Double team him. Do something. Do something to take him away. Don't let him get 200 yards. Even if that means that Vele or one of their other playmakers makes plays and you still lose the game, just don't give up the 200 yards to Dalton Kincaid. That's pretty simple in concept. But I think even bigger than that.
I don't know that it's quite that simple. I mean,
think simple in concept of just like don't let anyone ever get 200 yards on you. But like, what can you do?
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't let a guy have 200 receiving yards, especially a tight end.
A tight end, yes, because that means you're giving them that. And if you're giving them that, especially if you're giving,
I do think if you're force feeding a guy,
and this is what, but this is my thing is like, I don't mind giving up 200 yards to a single player if that's the only 200 yards that team is getting.
Right,
and
but that wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case because other players were also having success, and that was also part of the problem.
And I say force feeding, but like it wasn't force feeding to the point where Cam Rising is making bad decisions by looking his way every time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that Dalton Kincaid could have had 200 yards in this game, and USC still could have won if they had done two things differently. Number one, and not even differently, probably better, and one feeds off of the other. 0 sacks in this game. 0 sacks in this game. That is a problem. That's a problem. I mean, we can scream and shout about the roughing the passer penalties, but the very nature of getting that
there's only 1 tackle for loss.
Yeah, 1 tackle for loss, but the very nature of the roughing the passer penalties is that you didn't get to the passer before he got rid of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So USC wasn't getting to Cam Rising quickly enough. USC wasn't putting pressure on Cam Rising. They weren't. They were on a few occasions forcing him into bad decisions, but you got to do that consistently. Bad throws, rattle the guy, and I just don't think that USC was managing to do that. And the key to this defense has been to rattle the opposing quarterback, to get to the opposing quarterback, to create negative plays. And when you don't create negative plays, this is what happens. You give up these kinds of points.
Right.
And that feeds into not being able to create negative plays, not being able to get off the field, finish the first half better.
Mm-hmm.
Because Utah is able to bookend the half with touchdowns. And that basically takes away the advantage that USC had early on in that game where they completely played Utah off the park. So we got a text from Jake during the after the game that said, "Love your post game and opening rant. I think you guys did overlook talking about the amazing start that USC got off to, contrary to expectations in a crazy game on the road with the helmets, etc., and how big the touchdown going into the half was for the Utes. And yes, it's all about timing of where you're getting your stops, and if you get a stop on the front end of the halftime or the back end of halftime, you buy your offense time to continue to go out there and get that cushion that we've talked about before. Where
I wanted to talk about this.
One of the nice things is that USC in previous games had like a 14-point cushion, and that they weren't letting teams get closer than that. But by letting Utah get those 2 touchdowns on those possessions, you sort of killed any of that. Well, now we're not just trading touchdowns and it's 7-7, 7-7 going back and forth. The lead. It's a 14-point cushion, and there's just so much less pressure on you and more pressure on them. So I agree with Jake here that the timing that USC had in their advantage for the defense for much of the season, it just wasn't in this game, partially because they couldn't get pressure and create negative plays, and also partly because when they did get the stops, they got taken away from them. So it's a crapshoot, and it sort of goes around and around.
Yeah, you talked about the converting after turnovers thing. SC has 3 drives in which they don't score, right? I believe that's right. I can pull up the drives really quick again. 2 punts and 2 downs, but one of them's at the end of the half. So 2 punts and a down situation. And the problem is not that they had 3 drives that they didn't score. It's the timing of those 3 drives. It's yes, they have the first roughing the passer penalty, and we got a comment from Larry in the chat about that. The first roughing was roughing. Watch the play again. Clearly, the ball was gone. He saw it, took another step, dove in the quarterback. Consistently called all year, regardless of the team. Now, okay, the only thing I'll say about the refs, the first roughing the passer penalty, to me, is not roughing the passer. But I absolutely am with Larry here in that to Pac-12 refs, surely that's in line with what they call. That is and I tweeted it out as much during the game that that is one of those things where our inclination of watching games growing up, of what it takes for a player to be roughing, is taking an extra couple steps and nailing them when they don't need to, right? And I think that's Brock Heward's definition of roughing the passer too, taking a cheap shot and all that kind of stuff. The reality of it for the Pac-12 is taking something where you couldn't have at least thought about doing anything to take away your momentum there. And I think that there could have been theoretically, he does take a step and yeah, he could have moved his body a little bit differently. And so for me, it's not roughing the passer, but I get that the Pac-12 always calls that. Yes, I'll give you that part for sure. But to go back to the point.
Quick counter before you go back to the point. My issue with it is that, and I agree with the general sentiment that Pac-12 refs, this is just they have quick triggers on these things.
That's a roughing the call in the Pac-12. It's not a roughing the call that we think of.
My point is that, and this didn't just come up in this particular game, I have been screaming for a long time about how Pac-12 refs are completely unfair to defenders, because when you are running full speed at a person and they only let you have one step, less than a step, if you can't have one step and put your hands on a quarterback, and no matter what you're going to get, my problem with it is that if a receiver had the ball come and tip off their hands, the same amount of time had passed before a safety had shoved off of them, that wouldn't have been called a late hit, because the safety is making a play on the receiver who's trying to catch a football and might not necessarily see that the ball has gone away. So I was even thinking as I lay in bed that night, it's okay, so if you're going to ask to call plays with that minimal time in between the hit and the ball leaving their hands, you need a secondary whistle, like a duck call or something like that you blow as soon as the ball is out of the quarterback's hands. Because otherwise you're going to end up with and I'm not being serious, I'm being facetious, but otherwise you're going to you can't hold defenders accountable for when the ball left the quarterback's hands. Because it's just ridiculous.
You're asking a ref to take a step to react to the thing.
No, all I'm asking is for the refs to use common sense and understand that a man rushing full speed at a quarterback is going to run into the quarterback, and it's just going to happen, and you don't have to penalize that. Welcome to contact sports. But
Chris C says the replay always shows it in slow motion. Looks like he could have pulled back. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But okay, now the second roughing the passer penalty, and the only thing I'll say about that one is
way worse.
He got called because it was a hard hit. I don't think the timing was late at all. It was just really hard, and I think that you're the ref there, and you say, "Oh shoot, it was he got hit after he threw, and it was really hard." Well, that's roughing then, and it's that, but that's not roughing, but. But anyway,
it's not whatever. I love Dave in the chat talking about like if these refs were in charge of Tennessee, Alabama, half of the defenders on both sides would have been ejected for something. Like I agree.
Yes, yeah, for sure. But to go back to the point about the timing, yes, absolutely, the timing's right there. If you just move the drives around of when SC didn't score and when they did,
yes,
so much changes, and it's weird to think about that, but like it is the reality where the middle eighth is the middle part of the game, the middle 8 minutes, the last 4 minutes of the first half, and the first 4 minutes of the second half. The middle eight is what coaches call. I think it's a Belichick thing. I've always considered bookending the half as like the thing, like that is, and players will talk about it. I was just watching the Panthers game yesterday, and Mark Sanchez was talking about it. That this is how teams separate themselves: is they score before the half and then after the half, and a close game can become a game that you have complete control in, or the inverse. A game in which SC can jump out to a 21-7 lead and have control in. That way,
it evaporates.
It can evaporate, and it did evaporate in this game because SC has a great drive at the end of the second quarter, but they scored too quickly, and Utah ends up coming down and scoring right before the half, and it is a completely different game if it goes into halftime with SC up 2 scores. Completely different game. But it isn't. It also is a completely different game if Utah doesn't fumble the ball inside the 5.
Well, and also by that point, by the time Utah fumbles, by the time that fumble is created, I know at home and talking to everybody else, like everyone knows that this is whoever has the ball last is going to win because neither of these defenses can stop the other offense. And so when USC's defense gets a stop, a score after that stop is extra demoralizing because everyone in that stadium knows, well, neither of these teams can stop the other, and they just stopped us and then scored, and that cushion is back up to 14. And I'm not like blind. Utah could have responded too, and credit to Utah's defense for responding the way that they did, because if they don't respond and give up a touchdown, then it's an entirely different game. And for all I know, USC could go up 14, and then Utah could come around and force a turnover and get a touchdown themselves and do a million things that come later. So again, like the momentum stuff isn't perfect, but I agree with you that the timing of letting Utah get a stop right after you got a stop, it just wipes the slate back down to, well, now it comes down to scoring and scoring and scoring.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at it and look at the timing of it, and Utah scores on 5 of their last 6 drives, and the only one that they don't, they get 72 yards, and it's the fumble there. So like, yeah, again, one of those drives is the 2 of those drives are the penalty drives. The first of those last 6 is the drive with the interception taken off. And then one of the middle ones is in the beginning of the fourth quarter, is the one with the other pass roughing the passer thing.
Yeah,
that one, it was a 3rd down stop, but like I said, less egregious because SC at least had multiple plays to respond, and they didn't. They even committed a perfectly, egregious pass interference of themselves with Mekhi Blackman down the sideline on that drive. So like, it's about how you respond to things. And this is why, coaches talk about, I can't remember, I've listened to so much stuff in the last couple of days, exactly who was saying this, but like the idea is that coaches don't want teams to, be at the mercy of referees. And exactly, you got to control what you can control. And there's going to be bad calls. There's going to be good calls. And you can't be, operating out there that, this is a good call or a bad call, in the sense of you got to be ready for the next play.
Yeah, the line was, don't let the refs break your heart.
Yeah. Who was saying that? It's driving me nuts.
It was a commentator on a video on Twitter, and I think he might have even been quoting Lincoln Riley. So I don't know.
Right, like yeah. But I think it's the right sentiment, and that's again why Lincoln Riley isn't going to come out in the press conference and say we lost because of the refs, because again you have to preach that you have to take some control of your lack of a better word, destiny, right? Like that is, part of coaching is making sure that your players are in control of what they can control.
Yeah.
And that, things are not going to go great, but you have to, show the adversity and bounce back. And SC in this game on offense did that every time. The defense on the one.
I don't know that they did that every time, because the last 5 drives that USC had weren't exactly.
Well, there was in the last 5 drives that SC had, there was one drive that they didn't score. The one punt.
I thought there were 2 drives. The punt and then the end of the game.
The other. Well, the end of the
game matters.
The end of the game as a not scoring. I mean, yes, I guess.
Yes, we're counting the end of the game as a not scoring, because we count 4th and 9 as a score, as a big big drive. Like,
sure, yes, but it's not a 3 and out. You know what I mean? Like they didn't fail to convert a 3rd down.
No, but you had the ball last.
It's an unfinished drive. Like
USC had the ball last. They had the seconds and the timeout to go down and score. I've seen too many teams go down and score.
Right, but there's a difference between not capitalizing on a scoring opportunity to go win the game, which is what they did. They didn't capitalize on that opportunity to go win the game, and between saying a drive had 0 points. Like, they didn't finish the drive because the game ran out of time.
Yeah, but that was the time in which they were allotted.
I understand, but like, if you're going to say that, then we should say that they didn't convert the 4th down in the first half when they went for it on 4th down on the last play of the first half. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think you are wrong about what you're trying to say, but that's fine.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, let's get into over under and look back at the game with our predictions there. By the way, we got a comment from D that says can't listen to a USC podcast with the person who picked Utah. Alicia, how do you feel about that?
No comment.
All right. Let's get into over under and our picks and whether or not I was able to extend my lead. Do we have to do this segment now that
you're spoiling it for the folks?
Okay. All right. All right. Over under. We went into this. I had a 2-game lead on you. 23-21 was my record. You were at 21-23. First over under. You set the line at 181.5 rushing yards for SC. In the preview pod, I made the big case for why SC's rushing offense would get buku yards. Buku yards.
And in the CarCast, I complained about them not running the ball more.
Yeah, they finished with 175, 7 short of getting the over there. So I said over on 181.5. It was 175.
Yep.
You get the under.
I got the win.
You get the under. Next one. I set the line at 74.5 Cam Rising rushing yards because he had rushed for 91 against Florida, 73 against Oregon State, 59 at UCLA. You took the under on that. You said 74.5 was a little too high. It was 60. You in the ballpark, but not quite 74.5.
And that's a pure 60 because there were no sacks. So
yeah, no sacks.
74
he also had 9 receiving yards.
He did.
If he would have gotten it with the receiving yard, like if the receiving yards would have pushed him over, I would have been so mad at myself for not saying all-purpose yards.
Yeah.
That would have been a rough break, but not the case. Also, yards in the 2-point conversion don't count. Next one. You said over under 1.5 USC turnovers. I said under, and it was under. SC did not turn the ball over for the 6th time in 7 games.
That alone is very impressive.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. Now, Caleb Williams has had now 2 interceptions overturned because of penalties. The first one, I think, was a valid penalty, but this one was they only got the interception because of the PI. So, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Next one, I said 1.5 Tuli Tuipulotu tackles for loss. Because he was the second in the country in tackles for loss going into the game and the national sack leader. You took the under on that, and it worked out. He had 0.
Yeah, he was definitely in on a tackle for loss, but he wasn't one of the ones who got credit for it. So
yeah,
and it wouldn't have mattered because he didn't get another one.
He didn't get another one to get past the 1.5. You said 2.5 USC false starts, and boy, was this one close.
This one was dumb.
I took the under, and it would have been under if SC gets the final defensive stops, because SC commits 4 false starts, 2 on Mario Williams, 1 on Jonah Meinheim, and 1 on Bobby Haskins. 2 of those came on the last drive, the very last desperation drive.
Who could have thought that Mario Williams would be the one that got me the over on the false starts?
There you go. Always comes from the unlikely source.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, I said, oh boy, over under 22.5 Travis Dye carries. This, of course, coming off his career high, his USC high of 28 against Washington State last week. You took the over. You took the I don't know why I thought you took the under.
I genuinely, and I didn't look, but I wanted to go back and check the tape to see if I'd written it down wrong, because I can't imagine why I think I took the over, because I thought that they weren't going to give anybody else carries, but also I might have just been out of my mind. Like, I don't.
And that was bold. I didn't think, anyways.
I don't know.
I'm glad you took the under. That gives me the under.
I can't explain it. Maybe Dave in Orange County can confirm for us that I did in fact take the over, because
you definitely took the over for sure.
I don't.
You were just flat out wrong. It's okay. It's okay. You can.
I was brain.
It's all right. The first acceptance and admitting it is the first step here. And he only had 11, so a little wrong on that prediction, Alicia. A little wrong.
Yeah, very wrong.
Yeah. And the last one came from YouTube, from Alex, who said 28.5 points for the Utes. You took the over. I took the under. Of course, was more than that. Utah scored 43. So for the week, you went 5-2, and I went 2-5.
Mm-hmm.
No one cares about that. For the season, you now lead 26-25. Again, no one cares. Weekly winners, we got a few perfect 6-0s. Big shout out to Alaska Trojan, Carrie from Chicago, Big Poppy 55, and Ocean Beach Trojans. All went 6-0.
That's a big one.
Sorry, there were 7. There were 7 opportunities. Not 6-0. It's 6-1. 6-1. Still, 6-1 is pretty good. Pretty solid.
Hey, 6-1 is. I could have gone 6-1, but I am a stupid person apparently. 22 carries. Well, that's. Okay, I'm gonna be so mad if I go back and check the tape and I did take the under, and we're gonna have to put in a correction.
No corrections. We're locked in stone now. Okay, so the season leaders, things have really tightened up. There's like 14 people within 4 points of each other at the top. So
Pac-12,
tied for seventh place is Callie Cat and Callie Matt, David Orange County, Matt from Rancho, Monterey Michelle, Moose Pants, Ocean Beach Trojans, and Tad Frank.
Moose Pants.
You love Moose Pants, don't you?
Oh, I salute you, Moose Pants.
Tied for 5th, LA Fred and Piuelo. Fourth place, all alone, somehow, all alone. Fourth place is Randy from Redlands, who's has a record of 32-12. Tied for second is Ryan from Arizona at 33-11, with Carrie from Chicago, who's also at 33-11, and in first place, second straight week, Jay Vandy, who's at 34-10.
Jay Vandy's in control.
Yeah. Look at that. Vandy atop the lead. This is definitely not the SEC.
Yes.
Yeah. Game predictions. Bill Connolly's metrics had the Utes winning by 6.8 points, basically 35-28, with USC having a win probability of 35%. Mostly checks out except for the score thing. Vegas had the Utes by 3.5 with an over-under of 65. 65 got obliterated. Of course, SC loses 43-42. You said Utah 33, USC 30. I said SC 27, Utah 24. I had SC covering, but it was way lower than where it ended up being. And you had Utah winning by 3. They ultimately win by 2.
If those penalties had come through, then Utah might have scored 33 points. But I still would have been wrong because USC would have scored 40 something. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Score predictions are a pointless endeavor.
All right. Let's go to the mailbag. We got a bunch of questions. We'll start with a message we got from Dan in Valley Village. Dan in Valley Village. Another reason why I miss the rant line. By the way, no one ever talks about the rant line.
No, we get questions from people every week. I've seen a million comments on Twitter. Yeah, people.
I've seen nothing.
I think maybe I'm getting DMs from people because they're like, "Man, I really wish the rant line was around."
I've heard one person ask about the rant line.
No, I've seen multiple.
And
every week.
I was like, well, geez, I guess no one liked it then.
No, people loved it. We're just letting them down.
Dan, frequent caller from Valley Village, says, "Hi guys. I was listening to the CarCast and heard Lisa say that she was hearing that fans say that they should fire Lincoln Riley after one loss. Are you kidding me? What kind of spoiled doo-doo head says something as dumb as that? I went to school from 98 to 2002 and saw some of the very worst USC football has to offer. So I find it wildly offensive that after one very close loss, people are calling for heads. I'm sorry, I'm a total USC homer too, but for goodness sake, chill out. It's year one. It's a brand new team. It's year one in all caps, and we're already going bowling at minimum. So take a deep breath, take your Xanax, and enjoy the ride. Love you both, and fight on." Dan from Valley Village.
Thanks for the message, Dan. Also, I mean, there were a lot of trolls in the chat on during the CarCast, so like that to me is trolling. I think less trolly comments about firing Alex Grinch were certainly shared.
Yeah.
After the game, I would agree with Dan. It's year one. It's one loss by 1 point in Salt Lake City under weird circumstances. Like, this is not the time to start firing people or even talk about firing people. Right. But also, this is sports, and I saw people talking about firing Pete Carroll during the Pete Carroll era, so it happens. There are certainly Alabama fans out there who uttered the words "fire Nick Saban" at some point this weekend.
Now a good time when I mentioned that if Dave Roberts isn't getting fired, then
yeah.
So. Mm-hmm. All right, we got a message from Jeremiah who says, "Good afternoon. I know we've all had a couple days to cool down, and we should stop talking about the refs. But for the Fallout episode, or just for your consideration, I think it's fair to mention that the refs are always a problem in Salt Lake City. Take a trip down memory lane. The Sarks' first year and Adoree having 2 scores wiped off the board due to a fumbled callback that was then called a fumble after review, B, a kickoff return for a TD with an unfounded hold block in the back. I'm trying to recall, I also believe there were shenanigans during the Darnold debut as well. I just can't remember the calls. I'm saying it's cathartic to reminisce, and I feel like there was something else at play here, yet we only lost by 1 point. I would also like to add that defensive players will become apprehensive and skittish when they see all the flags getting tossed. You don't want to be the next one. keep that as food for thought as we continue to criticize the defensive performance. I guarantee you that those calls were affecting them. Thank you for your attention, and fight on, Jeremiah Jones.
Yeah, thanks for the message, Jeremiah. And I certainly agree that the calls can have a negative impact on the mentality of players.
Yeah.
And the great, this is the thing, is like great teams and great players will find a way to shrug it off and get their next stop. And that's me just saying that sometimes you have to remember too that this is
gotta be a goldfish, right?
This is a team. Yeah, you have to be a goldfish, but also this is a team of young men who may not always be capable of being goldfish. I'm not capable of being a goldfish half the time, so I'm not gonna sit here and say that that they are like bad people for not being able to be goldfish. Like, this is what happens. This is the struggle of life, learning those lessons and learning how to let these kinds of things shrugged off. And this is also why we enjoy college football, because we're watching people who are learning and growing and figuring things out and aren't perfect. They're not pros. Like, it happens. As for Salt Lake City, I'm not going to say it's a Salt Lake City thing. I'm just going to continue to say it's a Pac-12 refs thing. And also it's going to be a Big Ten refs thing. And it's going to be, on Saturday, I was writing things about Tennessee fans thinking that the refs were trying to rig the game for Alabama. Like, everybody complains about their refs.
Yeah.
Pac-12 refs are particularly bad, but that's why it feels like we're having deja vu every time these things happen in different places, because there are just bad calls every weekend in every game for every team, and we remember the ones that went against our team.
Yeah, the thing that I find hilarious to be is the duality of SC fans who are absolutely sure that the Pac-12 has it out for SC, at the same time coexisting with Pac-12 fans who are absolutely sure that SC gets every call.
Yes, Twitter is an interesting place for that.
It's like wild that it's just like so much of it tells you how the perspective of sports is so much like everybody's got blinders on to their own perspective, right? Like you're always going to think about the calls that didn't go your way, and you're going to remember those things. Like Jeremiah says, you're going to remember the Dory scoop and score that should have counted, right? You're going to remember that forever. I am going to remember as a Jags fan, Miles Jack being ruled down when he shouldn't have been down in the AFC Championship game, right? Like, you're going to remember those things. Nobody's ever remembering the calls that they benefited from, right? Like, you never.
It's easier to put those out of your mind.
Well, especially because a lot of times you just don't even register them. Right?
Yeah, you don't have the conversations after the game about them like everybody on the other side is going to be having.
Yeah. So I think this is less so like a Salt Lake thing, and more so like everyone just remembers when they've got burned, right? Everyone has the trauma of like ref trauma.
There's also home cooking, and I don't say that as a phenomenon that like happens on purpose, but when you're in front of a home crowd, like you're going to respond to the crowd going, ooh, after the quarterback gets hit, and maybe quicker to pull your flag because of it. Like, that kind of stuff happens.
Dan in the chat says, how about a timeout in the middle of play? Like, on the interception return, like the poor call by the ref to stop the clock.
The clock, Which, I mean, I get like Utah fans bringing that up, but at the same time, like I was sitting there going like, man, if I was a defensive coordinator, I know this is a very niche scenario, but like if I was a defensive coordinator, I would make sure all of my players knew that if you have an interception after a pass interference and you are the team trying to run down the clock, like
it is such run a out niche the clock scenario.
It's such a niche scenario, but like I didn't know that could happen, but like USC almost. If Utah had run out the clock, USC would have had an untimed down.
Right. But it makes sense. Like in hindsight, like he should have ran backwards.
Yeah, he should have just avoided contact. But like, who thinks about that? But like, it was weird, like justice in my mind, because like that feels like it shouldn't be the way it is,
Right.
but it is. And so the inadvertent whistle or whatever they turned it to be like,
because those timing rules aren't written for that specific situation.
yeah. So like, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. But that was one of the things. I thought there was some valid complaints about there was maybe a questionable hold in the end zone. My thing about a lot of fans complaining about holding in any direction is just like, holding is such a, if you want to point out bad refereeing on anyone's end, like there will always be screenshots of holds that you can point to. Like,
I implore anyone talking about holding penalties. Like I get it. Like,
it's frustrating.
I get like there's like holding on every penalty on every play on both sides. Yes, 1,000%. I get that. The hardest play to call, because like you're looking for the egregious ones, right? Like it's the egregious holds that get called, right? But when people take a picture of it, like I just think of like every time I go through Getty Images to find an image for like a thumbnail for a YouTube video or a featured image for an article or something, like every single picture has like some guy getting held.
Yeah.
Because if you just take a snapshot, like that's the position you're going to find players' hands in all the time. Whether or not it's holding is a side story, because again, like it all depends on, was it an egregious hold? Was it this? Was it that? Was the action actually?
When did he release? Like, there's just a lot of nuance there that I don't even have time for.
It was the Brendan Rice thing, right? Like it was a great block until he held it too far because the guy ran behind him.
Yeah.
Right? Like
that one's just like
it was a textbook hold, because yes, it ends up allowing was Taj Washington, right? On the return. Ends up allowing him to have a bigger return. But like it's one of those situations where like that's you completely get why it happens, how it happens. Yeah. All right, let's go to questions that we've gotten from YouTube here. Everyone joining in on the chat as well. You can always pop in your question, put question at the front. It helps us see them and tag them and talk about them here in the mailbag. James says, wonder if we can get Big Ten officials for the UCLA game.
That would be funny, but then it would just be an introduction to how Big Ten officials also suck, because all referees suck. Like,
yeah, I think if you watch a Michigan game, and I think Michigan fans will tell you that like Michigan Big Ten refs are the actual worst.
Yeah.
This is why, like, I think it's I get it, and I'm sympathetic to the thought of like leaving the Pac-12 because of how the Pac-12 refs interpret the rules. I'm so sympathetic to that, because we've talked about it. They just call everything. But at the same time, like, I think it's such wishful thinking to think that any other conference in the grand scheme of things is going to be significantly better.
I think
refereeing is just hard.
Yes, absolutely. Refereeing is hard. I think it will be better in the ways that people want it to be better, though, in the sense of like
they might show more competence in terms
philosophy, but they'll still miss calls. Like don't get it twisted. There will be missed calls, and those missed calls will benefit and hurt USC at some point. It just all goes round and round.
Yeah. Dave the Greater says the defense is obviously the problem. What changes need to be made? I think the linebackers are going to play better. I think SC needs to get more from the linebackers. It doesn't help when Eric Gentry gets hurt. But Shane Lee in pass coverage, not helping. The pressure really has not really come from the linebackers either. The turnovers tend to come from the secondary. Like, it's the linebackers.
So I think I 100% agree. The linebackers need something, need an injection of life in there. I think that maybe Alex Grinch needs to reassess pressures and where the pressures are coming from and who's effective at bringing pressure in the right moments, and how to deal with a particular player who is destroying you, like Kincaid was. I think this might be a really interesting couple of weeks, because if ever there was going to be an opportunity to start to see more after a bye week and then playing Arizona, to see more from the sort of guys waiting in the wings, your Rajon Davises, your Julian Simons, your maybe we saw a lot of Tuisivi Nomura, seeing more of Tuisivi Nomura, maybe like that kind of situation where maybe the changing of the guard, if it was ever going to happen, you'd sort of like to see the transition be born out of these next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when we say that, like that doesn't mean, you could throw Rajon Davis in there and he could be out of his depth. So, it's
yeah. I'm apprehensive to the idea that the answer all along was this guy who just never got playing time. Like that,
which
that
sometimes does happen, but it's also very rare.
It's very hopeful.
Yeah,
it's very hopeful. Yeah, and yeah, maybe I just I have a hard time thinking that that's for sure the answer. SJ says at the Rice-Eccles blackout there was a sea of black shirts, a sprinkling of cardinal, but that one random dude wearing blue. My question, Michael, would you be that guy?
Would you?
No, probably not. I probably, realistically, in that situation, I probably would have been wearing like a black hoodie.
That's what I was about to say. Like, if you were just gonna be like a random guy in the crowd, like you'd probably be wearing black.
Yeah, more than likely. Not because like to participate in the blackout thing, but just because that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one random like I always think of Marlins Man. When Marlins Man is at a game, he just stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sagar says, did the Raid of Troy house go to high schools in SoCal? So Alicia went to Notre Dame. Big Notre Dame grad.
Notre Dame high school.
Notre Dame grad.
High school.
Notre Dame, same thing.
High school.
And then I of course went to the two-time CAF state champ Norma. Go Gauchos, G House. I don't want to talk about this upcoming week against Pedro. It's going to be bad. And
yep.
I just went to Pedro yesterday, and like I'm just wincing every time I turn the corner.
We talked about potentially going to that game, and someone over here was like, "Well, but I haven't been to a game in so long, and I don't want it to be that game because it's just going to."
I want it to be that game, but I don't want it to be that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Down with the Pirates. Let's go to a question we got from Glenn. What's frustrating is after all these years of seeing major issues with the Pac-12 refs, the conference has done nothing to change the narrative. I disagree with this. I don't think that they've done nothing. I think there's a difference between them trying and the narrative not changing. Because they've tried a bunch of stuff. They've tried, like, they brought in the guy who's the specialist to talk at Media Day. They've done all that stuff. They've
hired people.
They've hired people. They've talked about this big stuff at Media Day about how they're changing things, and they have tried to do that stuff. The narrative has never changed. So, like, everything they've tried just hasn't worked. And I think that goes back to, again, refs are just bad. Like, it's hard to be a referee, and they're going to always end up looking bad.
I guess my response there would be that I do think that the Pac-12 has tried, but I also think there's a difference between, like, I could say I'm going to try to get in marathon shape, but if I'm not committed to getting in marathon shape, then, like, I can say, well, I tried because I went for a run yesterday, but that doesn't mean that, like, I actually really did, or that I really stuck with it, or really had accountability for it. And I think that's one of my issues with the conference is, you can talk this talk, but are you actually having accountability with your referees? Are you holding them to a standard that will take them from being the worst referees, the worst of the worst, to the middle of the worst, which is what I would be, would feel acceptable. So, yeah, I think that the frustration is real. But it's also a reflection of the entire conference, not just with regard to refereeing. The management of the entire conference has been very blasé about quality. So,
yeah, and to me, this is the more egregious stuff with the Pac-12, not necessarily the TV contract. And I get why the TV contract is the be all and end all because money is everything. But this is even worse because like this is stuff that didn't have to be representative of the market and all that those kind of like this is entirely in their control.
Within the control. Yeah, well, to a point, but yeah, like Glenn says,
to a point.
Totally understand, but it just seems they can't get any traction. Accountability is an issue with the conference, and yeah, I think Glenn, that's what it comes down to is when you look at accountability across the board within the conference, you don't see it, and it doesn't just. It's not just contained within the refereeing problem. Like the refereeing problem is a symptom of other things that are mismanaged and not held accountable in the conference, which is ultimately why USC leaves. USC leaves for the Big Ten because
they leave because of the money.
Because the money, but why does the Big Ten have the money? Because the Big Ten is not squandering it to the degree the Pac-12.
Well, the Big Ten has the money because they have like fan support. They have TV markets, they have blue bloods, they like there's a and competent leadership. It's a bunch of things. Dave the Greater says, back to my question from the CarCast, is there a way to see the score given to the refs? I'm sure there isn't, but it should be made public. That's I think that's one of those things where it's never going to be public. As long as it's not a hardened sort of metric, at least not that we know. We know in baseball there are metrics given to how umps are, and we can see a lot of those numbers just based on the technology that exists.
There's public facing.
There's public facing statistics that people can look up. That like, what is this guy's close call rate compared to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
That I think in a situation where in football there isn't a hardened way to have that data, I think it's a little bit harder. And then on top of it, there's probably legal reasons why it can't be public. Like you probably don't want it public, especially when gambling's legal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that going to alter, how things are, how money goes, and I don't know.
If I was a gambler, though, I would want that
right.
I would want that information. I would want to know going into a game, these guys are going to be throwing flags or very heavily, or they're going to sort of keep the flags in their pocket.
This guy always calls, things benefiting the home team because maybe this guy is impacted by the crowd noise, or maybe this guy.
This guy tends to call pass interference.
Or whatever it is. And then you're like, well, then I'm not going to
bet the under because the offenses are not going to be
right or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think in a perfect world, it'd be great to see all this stuff for,
but we don't even see this in the NFL. So again, we don't see this in soccer either. We know that the officials are getting grades of some sort because that's how they determine like postseason duties and stuff like that, but no league out there that has a choice in the matter puts that out front.
Yeah. Can you imagine if MLB released like all their data on Angel Hernandez? Ooh. That'd be a day.
Yeah.
Dave the Greater also says, speaking of that last drive, quote unquote drive. See, he agrees. How did we get that time back in the clock? So I'm trying to remember. So during the interception return, a ref signaled
that the clock should stop, so the clock stopped.
Yes, and I'm guessing that ref didn't realize that the ball was intercepted.
Yes, the ref thought that after the pass interference, when the ball got tipped, the ref thought that it was an incomplete pass.
Yes, and so then the clock operator has to stop the clock if they see any of those things.
Yeah.
So they stop the clock, and it cost Utah like 4 or 5 seconds. They could have run down then, but also there was time added on there too. Like I can't remember exactly how it played out. I haven't rewatched that sequence.
They don't do a very good job of explaining it to us either. So,
but there's another time where they add a couple of seconds, right?
They added, so the clock was down to like 8, and they reset it. They reset the clock to when the clock got. So they just completely. it's as though the rest of that play didn't happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the whole thing was a mess. Scott says, did it annoy anyone else that the must rush the field? They were favored for F's sake.
I don't get mad at people for rushing the field.
I think field rushes are awesome
on an emotional night
as long as they're safe,
especially in a 1-point win. Okay, if you rush the field and you've won by like 20 or something like that, and you've had a whole quarter to digest the fact that you were gonna win, then I think you're a little bit lame. But circumstances, whatever.
Well, if you win by 20 and you are favored,
yeah, don't do that. But a 1-point win on an emotional night against a top 10 team, even though you were favored, it's still an upset in terms of the rankings. I don't. It was a last second thing. Like, I get it. I don't mind it.
Yeah, and I like when Ohio State rushes the field their last game of the season. They tend to do that. That looks super cool. I like that Clemson just rushes the field every game. Which my least favorite part of Twitter are people are like, why is Clemson rushing the field for beating Mercer? And it's like, well, they've rushed the field for like that's their tradition is they just rush the field. But yeah, I don't mind it as long as it's safe and people aren't going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Which is a concern.
Which is the
certainly.
Concern. Yes.
But on an emotional night like that, after losing to UCLA, getting a win in that way, yeah, absolutely. I think that it's college football. That's what's great about it.
Yeah.
Eric says, does watching Cam Rising highlights from the game give you Vince Young flashbacks? It makes me sick. You know who it reminds me of? It's not Vince Young.
Brett Hundley?
It's a little old quarterback from a little old high school called Narbonne. Troy Williams. So the Sam Darnold game in 2016, SC loses that in the final minute because Troy Williams runs in and he ran in, right? Didn't he run in for a score at the end?
I don't remember.
2014 in the final minute, SC loses the game because Travis Wilson runs in for a touch. Did he run in or was that a pass?
Again, I don't remember.
Maybe it was a pass. Was
Your
it a rub
memory is
route?
better
I
than
think
mine.
Was it a rub route? Yeah, I think it was.
Maybe.
I don't know. But they score in the last minute. SC has lost in the last minute at Utah like 3 times. And all of them have been like, they're not like the same play, but like they might as well could have been.
Same play in spirit.
Yeah. And and Travis Wilson was a guy who beat SC on the ground at times. Troy Williams, the greatest quarterback in LA City history. Yes, I said it. Sorry, Jamal Holloway. Yeah, he beat SC on the ground at times. Ultimately, Troy Williams played SC in 2017, and Shotgun Spratling talked about this. The irony is that in 2017, Utah scores in the final minute, goes for 2, but doesn't get it. Remember, Janae Harris makes a crazy tackle right at the goal line?
Mm-hmm.
That was basically the same thing, but didn't pan out because that one, Troy Williams gets stopped. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is one of those things. But yeah, I could see why you would think about the VY highlights, but yeah, to me, I just end up thinking about the other Utah guys.
Well, it didn't help that he was literally there.
He was. Yes, he was. Dan says, what do you think about the 3-way tie for first place at the end of the season? UCLA, SC, and Utah. I think that would be wild if that happened. I cannot see it actually happening because I think Oregon's got a very legitimate chance here.
Well, in order for that to happen,
Oregon have to lose twice. So UCLA and Utah have to both beat them.
Yeah, which I don't know.
I mean, it could happen. Both of those games are in Autzen.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on Utah beating Oregon at Autzen.
Yeah. Dan says Troy Williams was the TV pass. Yeah. Like I said, my memory is mostly that Troy Williams did it more than anything else.
Yeah.
Adam says, why did Vince Young have to be there?
Apparently he's friends with somebody on the Utah staff. like the running backs coach or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, Manuel's back. He asked about things
To do in
about
Salt Lake
the
City?
Salt Lake City thing.
Mhm.
He said had a great time. Lucky 13, proper burgers, and Rosio's was outstanding. Rice-Eccles was rocking. Let's play again at the end of the season. Thanks again for the pointers. Awesome. Glad you had a good trip.
Yeah, good job, chat, for pointing Manuel in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It
was funny because the red iguana came up because that's what was hopping on Friday night. Apparently, I was on Twitter. Our friends over at USCfootball.com were chilling there, I think.
Awesome. And did people go get Venmo money from Chris?
I don't know how much Venmo money Chris Trevino gave out. I hope people cash in on that.
Yeah. All right. This is going to wrap up this episode. Thanks for everyone for joining along. We will be back on Wednesday with a full jam-packed episode to talk about SC through the first 7 games. We're going to talk about mid-season stuff. We're probably going to do like mid-season superlatives. We haven't written the rundown yet, but like I've got a bunch of ideas. I'm excited about it.
I have started to compile data for my does USC have a second quarter problem question as a teaser. As a teaser, they do. But find out on Wednesday. It's
weird. Like a second quarter problem is weird. Like how do you even?
I'm compiling my stats.
Now, I'm not saying that it's not the case, but like
where does that come from and why? I have no idea.
Yeah, like it's like third quarter makes sense. Like, well, you just
halftime.
You didn't adjust, and the other team did. Yeah. Right. Yeah. First quarter makes sense because you just started out flat or whatever. But like, a second quarter problem is like, well, how does that happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. Steven really quick says, do you think this past week's game helped or hurt SC's recruiting pitch? I don't think it did anything to that. Gerard over at USCfootball.com always talks about, and he'd be the expert to ask this, but he always talks about one game doesn't change anyone's mind. Plus, you can absolutely spin if you come here,
you're starting right away if you're a linebacker or a defensive lineman.
But also, you're why we score 2 more points and don't lose by a point.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I think everything that could be negative could be absolutely spun back the other way.
But also, I think USC's best recruiting pitch across the board is just like there are starting jobs wide open on this team.
Yeah, and that goes for the portal too.
Offensive line too, because so many of those guys are
graduating. Speaking of Gerard, the porthole.
Yes, porthole.
Glenn, final question for real. Glenn says, will Haas score points this weekend?
They will not.
Referring to me wearing a Haas cap. Because it is U.S. Grand Prix.
Hey, it would be fitting for the American team.
It's not fitting. It's a snapback.
It would be right for the American team. It was funny.
That was funny.
It would be right for the American team to score points at the United States Grand Prix, but it's also Haas. And I don't know what happened to Kevin Magnuson, but like I feel like he went from Kevin Magnuson and Valtteri Bottas went from like the first few weeks of the season going like, oh man, like they're really rolling with those teams, and they have literally not scored a point in their cars. Months.
Haas didn't bring in the upgrade until like the middle of the year.
Yeah,
and even when they did, like it did nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
So like they've just been at the same spot the whole time.
Oh.
Like
Glenn is heading to Austin. I am so jealous, dude. So jealous.
Let us know about the brisket. Let us know if you're going to Franklin's, if you're going to Black's, if you're going to Lockhart. What's the other place? What's the Salt Lick?
The Salt Lick, yeah. Well, there's Black's and Terry Black's. Lockhart's just a great place to go if you want to do some barbecue tourism.
Yeah. Barbecue tourism sounds weird, right? Like it sounds like as someone who is invested in TikTok, I'm weirdly subscribed to Hawaiian tourism, like
the Hawaiian tourism debates about
but like there's a word for it, like something I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but
Glenn says route meet up in Vegas for the F1 race next year. Yeah,
I want to make it happen, dude. I really do. No, I do want to say one thing about Lockhart. Like I literally went there for barbecue tourism. Like we went knowing we're going to stop at like 4 different places. And when you do that, like it's like wine tasting, where
Yeah,
like
it's brisket tasting.
the rookie mistake you can make when you go wine tasting is like, oh, we're just gonna go everywhere and we're gonna drink all the
Well,
wine that they give us and blah blah blah. And
Are
then
you gonna say what I think you're saying about this?
you go to 4 different places and you get brisket from all of them and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And you eat like 2 slices of brisket at every place, and then you're like, oh my god, I want to die.
Oh, I was just saying the rookie mistake is getting sides.
Yes.
Which sucks because it's like you look at the mac and cheese, you're
Oh
like,
my
oh
gosh.
my god, it looks like
creamed corn, mac and cheese. Or they just give you like the slices of white bread with it, and you're like, oh, but I like a slice of white bread.
The Mrs. Barrett's don't care about. But no, give me the or the banana.
But like the boat of banana cream pie or banana
or the cobbler,
banana pudding or like, cobbler stuff. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like yeah.
But that's all stuff designed for you to eat less brisket.
Of the brisket. Yeah.
All right. For real. Last question. Nick says, can you forgive me for being a jackass on Twitter? Emotions are running high. Emotions are always running high in those kind of games. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think everyone.
I disregard. I get pissed off at things, and then I just disregard them like 20 minutes later because I'm like, we're all just hyped up. Like, gotta calm down.
All right, we will see you guys on Wednesday. Same rot time at the same rot channel.
Mm-hmm.
Did I do that reference right?
Maybe. Yes.
Okay. Even though last point for real. Never ever if you're singing someone happy birthday, please never do the
and many more. No,
don't do any
on Channel 4 and Scooby Doo on Channel 2 and Highway to Heaven on Channel